We are One Sweet Wrestling Podcast, and with us, quite possibly the biggest guest we've had, both in stature and in the company.
Yeah, sure.
Nick Aldis, NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Sir, how are you doing today?
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you. I'm doing well.
Fantastic. We know that you have a busy night ahead of you. We just want to get some questions in if we can.
Yeah.
So, being the NWA Heavyweight Champion, you hold a belt with quite a long lineage, both in Texas and throughout.
The longest.
The 70-year.
Yeah.
Love it. Are you enjoying this responsibility?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that when I look at sort of what I envision myself to be, or who I envision myself to be in wrestling, this is really it. Obviously, at the time when I was first getting into the business, the NWA title wasn't necessarily the prominent world championship, but I'm a student of the game, so like to then have an opportunity to hold it and to also be responsible for sort of bringing it back into into the consciousness of the fans. It's been great because I'm a fan, as much as anyone else. So like to see my vision and the vision of Dave Lagana and Billy and everyone else involved with the new NWA. To see it sort of come to fruition is just, it's great. And obviously the response has been fantastic. We've got so much further to go.
I love it. So both Beto and I here are fans of Billy Corgan. Was there ever any type of hesitation with working with him, knowing he wasn't I know he's a big fan. I've seen interviews with him and, Joe Rogan podcast. He talks about how the NWA, and he puts the NWA over majorly. Was there any type of hesitation going into it?
Well, I did work with Billy briefly when he came to Impact, and I had met him over the years because he is a fan, he, when he came into TNA, it was different. Because obviously I was in a different place, mentally. I was very checked out by the end of my run there. I never complained about how they treated me, financially, and I think a lot of the criticisms that were thrown at TNA during that, administration are sometimes a little bit unfair. I think it's very difficult for anyone to put themselves in their shoes. It was ultimately they went from being like a small company with a weekly pay-per-view to being on like cable television in in the space of 8 years.
Right.
So they did a lot of things good. It wasn't all bad. I think it's just like sometimes the bigger the spotlight, the more flaws you see. But I digress. Billy came in, and we worked together. Very, very briefly. He was loosely involved in my final angle in the company with me and James Storm. And the input that he had was good. And I remember coming away from it thinking, he's not just a fan. He clearly studies the genre from the production standpoint, so I was happy about it. And then obviously the combination of him and Lagana, I think, was more appealing to me. I love Billy to death. He's a wonderful guy, and he's a genius. He really is. Were it just him, I might have been a little more reticent to be involved. But he understands, because he's a businessman first and foremost. His success in music is because of his talent, but it's also because of his acumen. Which is why now he's getting ready to go on a multi-million-dollar, arena tour. Now, he's told me stories about some of the offers he's had over the years for his entire catalog, and all the numbers are just unbelievable. And he's very shrewd, he's very calculated, and he's going to apply those same qualities to the business, with the NWA. And in the meantime, he has his creative input, but he also knows when to delegate. And that's what's really cool, is that the product you see in 10 Pounds of Gold is, it's a result of all of our inputs, like from different, things like that. That whole show came about really as an organic discussion from all of us, where I said, look, I don't love boxing, I don't love MMA, but I like it. But I tell you what I really love is 24/7, all access, embedded. They're doing it better than we're doing it, because they're built. They're spending all this time luxuriating on this one rivalry, one match, one story. One pivotal moment where it all culminates in this one big thing. And it's manifested itself in where we are now with me and Cody at All In. Because Cody saw it too. He saw what we were doing, and he's because there's another smart guy, that sees things, on the next plane. And I said this in one of the episodes of 10 Pounds. It's like I see All In as like this intersection of all of our different roads, all our different beliefs and our own principles and stuff. They all intersected at this one moment where we went, that's the thing,
Well, taking it back, you said you were a student of the game. You are from Docking, Norfolk, England. Am I correct?
Yes.
Was there a lot of exposure to wrestling growing up?
Yes and no. WWF, in Europe, in the UK, WWF was the key brand, and that's always, in my opinion, is the most overlooked and sort of, and I think because of, the majority of wrestling, for lack of a better term, experts, are American. It's an element that I think is often overlooked when they discuss the longevity of the WWE and their ability to overcome challenges from like WCW, and stuff like that. Was their international marketing, their presence in the international markets was so much stronger. Like I remember as a kid, some of my friends bringing in like NWO, toys or this and that, and me thinking like, what is that? Like
you were a
Hollywood
WWF
Hogan, it just didn't, I was like, who's that guy trying to be like Hulk Hogan? You know what I mean? Genuinely, right. As a little kid, I was like, I guess I was 10 when that happened, and I just remember just being like, I don't get it, and I remember thinking like, I loved Macho Man Randy Savage, still do to this day, but when I saw him in this other company, I was just kind of like, ugh, well, I don't get it,
Yeah, and they did that one angle in WrestleMania 9, I think it was, where they were making fun of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage before the pay-per-view.
Right.
And it was like, so does their legacy mean nothing to this company anymore?
Well, the funny thing is that as a kid, when I saw all that stuff, all that went over my head. And that's why I think sometimes, like, there was this period of wrestling that we don't really talk about anymore, like the early to mid 2000s, where there was so much stuff like that, where it's very like shoot, there was a lot of like hidden agenda stuff that was being like woven into the storylines. Like it was kind of sick, and it was kind of a little bit like
when Vince Russo came to the ring, you're just like,
well,
what?
not so much that, but like just things they would say, and like if you were smart to what was going on, and you knew some of the people involved, you knew that some of these were like digs at like and they still do it to this day. But it's like, it got like to the point where it was a little bit like over the top, and it was and I just remember thinking, like, when I was a kid, I didn't understand what any of this stuff was about, and all it did to me was just like turn me off. And if you look at the demographic that we're hitting now, I think that's evident, because like our the key demo for like wrestling now is like what, males in their 50s, so it's like we haven't generated new audience for a long time, because like I think because a lot of the stuff goes over like kids' heads, because they're just like I don't know, like they're on YouTube watching people dab and stuff, like that, like they're not sitting there going like, oh, he's making reference to that time that he got kicked off a bus, or something. Yeah. They don't care, like they don't have the time to go and read all this dirt sheet stuff, like and I think sometimes we get so bogged down in all that, but like that was sort of my impression of a lot of that stuff back then.
Well, referring to this, as a performer, do you feel like sometimes fans have too much information on wrestling?
There's access to a great deal, but it's up to the fans to choose whether they want to consume it or not. Does that make sense? I think that certainly there have been times where I've thought to myself, it's very frustrating as a performer to just think, like, why don't you do the show? Like you said, like
yes.
you do it. If you're so goddamn great at this, if you're so smart, like how come you're sitting there, you bought a ticket, right? Like, and there are those moments where you want to say that, but at the end of the day, they're also the very high volume consumers of the product, so you kind of have to take the rough with the smooth. One thing I always tell young guys if they ask my advice is to not pander to those fans, because they'll always be there, and that's not a knock on them. There's a lot of fans who because they choose to spend more of their day consuming other areas of the genre, and the information element of the genre, which can be very compelling. I'm very compelled by it, or I was before I got into the business. Now it gives me a headache, but I was compelled by it. But their dollar isn't worth any more than a guy who just walked in off the street's dollar. You know what I mean?
I hear
like,
you.
and that's what I always try to remind guys of, is like, those guys will be there, you know, like impressing them is low hanging fruit. Like that is, you know, if you get them, great. You've got, you know, you're fighting for their attention with everybody else, and you're also basically those guys. I liken those guys to like the sort of you know, a guy who's dating a bunch of different girls, and eventually he's going to get bored of, you know, and he's going to move on to another girl.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Because it's always a fad thing. Like I always remember, like in TNA, you'd see like Samoa Joe, like, and he's one of the best performers of his generation, you know, and I owe a great deal to him. I think he's phenomenal. But those fans would, like, 1 minute he'd be like their number one guy, their number one draft pick, and then 6 months later they'd be like burying him, you know, like, oh, Joe's sloppy, he's this, he's that, he's like, and he's no different. It's the same. It's the same.
Your taste just got different.
You're just bored, you know. You're just like, they just want something different, you know. They want to they just want to they want validation for themselves, and that's fine. But you're playing a risky game if you're just working for them, because the chances are your window is going to be very short. Whereas I've always tried to sort of play the long game of the qualities and the attributes that, in the long run, make everybody across the board go, that guy's a something. You know, you may not get it right away, and you're going to get some of that. You're going to get some of that bullshit off the bat, where, oh, he's like a cookie cutter. Like, I get generic cookie cutter. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know that many guys who look like me. You know. And cookie cutter for me in pro wrestling may have been applicable in the early 2000s, when they were just churning out like monster after monster, like, you know, muscle guys. But the last time I checked, like, most of the guys look like cab drivers now. You know? So like, that's cookie cutter, actually.
Yeah, you don't have somebody that looks like Dorian Yates in front of you.
Most of the guys, well, I don't look like Dorian Yates either, but like most of the guys look like fans.
That's
you know?
true.
And it's like, okay, is that what's going to move the needle? I don't know.
Now, I've heard in an interview, you say that the most important thing for you is the storytelling, not
100%.
So, not knocking anybody in any other division.
Sure.
What? Oh, pardon me. Can you kind of explain your philosophy on that?
What we do is entertainment. Nobody is watching this. I'll choose my words carefully here. Save maybe 1 or 2% of the audience who may be a couple of sandwiches short of a picnic. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what I'm driving at. Nobody is watching this really believing that they're witnessing a genuine athletic contest, or a genuine fight, you know, a genuine conflict between two people. They want to be taken on a ride, though. I believe that. I believe that even the ones who play the role in the audience because they want to be part of the show.
Right.
I believe even those people deep down want to be taken on a ride. And that's one of the reasons why I love being NWA champion, because getting to travel around and do these different things, you know, it's so great looking at all the feedback. They go, oh, they're doing this. That means that so-and-so's he's gonna beat this guy. Oh, and this is another great one I get. They go, oh, well, he's already got all these other bookings, you know, lined up. So thanks for telegraphing that he's clearly gonna win his title match on this show.
Yep.
In like that. Yeah, okay, but you also thought that when I beat Tim for the title in CZW. People said, why did you do it there? And believe me, I was saying the same thing. I hate it there. But it was a thing that made everyone go, oh, what? You know, and it creates that situation where they go, hey, it happened.
Anything can happen.
Right. And sometimes you want to do it like that, and sometimes you want to create the moment and build to the right thing and do the right thing at the right time. But prior to my run with the NWA title, I'd had one standing ovation from a match, and it was my final match in TNA. You know, me and James killed each other. You know, everyone knew we were leaving. Everyone knew I was leaving. You know, at the time they thought James was leaving as well. It turned out he wasn't, but they thought we were both leaving. You know, we put ourselves through you know, tables and jumped up. You know, I jumped off the top to the floor through a table. I mean, we did all kinds of, you know, mental stuff. and it was a genuine emotional moment, and they went with it. But that's like a one-off. Since I've had the NWA title, I've had dozens of standing ovations because I've been able to take the fans out of that where they're like, oh, okay, yeah, he's going to beat this guy. Oh, wait, and again, not knocking the guys I've been wrestling, but some of these guys are pretty nominal guys to the point where they've gone, oh my God, like maybe he might just, and then when I've beaten him in the middle with my finish, they've gone, you know what, that was a hell of an effort. Like that, and now that guy, and that's my job is for me to, and I would tell the guy I'm wrestling, stay here, you take this moment. I don't need it. I've got the belt. You get the moment, and I leave, and that's business.
A gracious champion.
Well, it's not great. That's business. That's the business we're in, because what does it do for that promotion if I just come in and beat that guy like he's a ham sandwich and then leave?
Right.
It doesn't do anything for anyone. It doesn't do anything for me. I just wasted my time beating a ham sandwich. This guy doesn't, they go, oh, he ain't nothing. And this promotion's no good because that's their best guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like
you.
all the way around. Like, and I think that element, I'm not saying I'm a throwback, but I do think that there are less people in my generation who approach it with that mentality than there should be. And I think a lot of guys are just too busy just worrying about be their match getting a good rating or a good approval, or people saying good match, that was an amazing match. But the match is, the work should be done prior to the bell. And then what, then you have to deliver. I'm not saying you can't. The days of going out and kind of, working a hold and wait, then I'll hit my finish when the time is right, brother. Like that those days are over.
Mm-hmm.
But the the emphasis on an epic match, there's only so many of those you can see in one night.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just it's exhausting,
Yep.
and it becomes meaningless. So I take the route of I believe it's harder work. This term work rate gets thrown around a lot, but I think it's if you're very athletic, and you're able to execute all these really cool moves, it's very easy to just go out and do all those moves one after another and kick out. That's easy, really. When you think of it, once you've learned how to do it and can execute it, what are you proving? That you've got a good memory?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, to me, there's not as much art in that as there is in really having the courage to try to take people on a ride. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're the champion, it has to work every time.
I hear you. Well, Beto, do you have a question for the man?
How you doing, Mr. Aldis? I do have a question for you. So you were speaking earlier about 10 pounds of gold. I actually got to catch what I guess the most recent episode at work, which is always fun when the boss isn't around. So my question for you is, Cody does not have the ROH title anymore.
Right. He didn't have it before.
He didn't have it before. He didn't win.
He didn't win it.
So where does that leave us as far as the renegotiation as far as the dealer is concerned?
Well, here's the thing. Cody's promoting that event along with Nick and Matt Jackson. Yeah? So the event sold out. It's going to be a good gate. Cody has an opportunity to take, the NWA World title from me. Aside from the payday, what's in it for me?
Right.
What's he putting up really? Like, he's not risking anything. And to me, reward should come with risk.
Right.
And we have to figure out what that risk is now because, he's got greedy. He's gone looking for these other world championships, very prestigious championships in their own right. But my logic was if you're gonna have that, you don't get to walk in with that with that title from another promotion and just hold on to it and then have the chance of you're gambling with house money.
Right.
That's not how it works.
So speaking of walking in with other championships, he has a title match against Kenny Omega tomorrow night.
Sure.
So would that be something to kind of, I guess I would say, something to present in this renegotiation if he walks out with the New Japan title?
You could make the argument that the IWGP Heavyweight Championship is, is up there with the most prestigious and historic, world championships that, in the history of the business. Absolutely, the opportunity to add that to my resume would certainly be something that would capture my interest.
Okay. Well, I think that's my question, really. That's something I was dying to ask.
I have one last question for you. Being an Englishman,
Yes.
is the World Cup coming home?
I can't jinx it. I cannot jinx it. I'll tell you this. We have as good a chance as we're ever likely to have.
Especially after today.
Because the way the brackets, panned out, the way the groups panned out, the way the brackets are now, we've got Sweden. We have as good a shot as any to get as far as we can. Having said that, objectively, I said that whoever won today's game with Belgium and Brazil was going to go all the way. That was Belgium have looked fantastic. Brazil are obviously Brazil. So the way I looked at it was like whoever wins that game is going all the way, or France.
I have it France-England in the final.
Really?
Yes.
That would be epic.
I mean, being a Manchester United fan, I have to go with France only because of Paul Pogba. But
he's been phenomenal. And who's that kid
Mbappe?
Yes. Oh my God.
He's worth the money for sure.
What a phenom. Yeah. I mean, like that.
He's the new Thierry Henry.
In the first round, that first round knockout game, unbelievable performance. Like that was, I mean, this whole tournament has been. I think it's the best World Cup ever.
I agree.
Just the upsets, the performances, the goals. I mean, like every game there's like a highlight reel goal. Almost every game there's been, apart from there's been a couple of 0-0s, and the Japan game there they got. But you see, even that was sort of entertaining to me. For like the pro wrestling part,
the storyline
it was like it was cool that was part of this World Cup as well.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Because there was all these different elements where like. When people go back and look at this World Cup, they're going to go, this World Cup was crazy top to bottom. Germany didn't make it out the groups, like the Argentina are out, Spain are out.
England
Brazil
made it
out.
through a shootout.
England won a penalty shootout. I mean, like, what's happening? It's like the whole world's been turned
Bizarre
upside
world.
down. Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Nick Aldis,
yes.
We absolutely want to thank you for your time. We know you have a bunch of adoring fans waiting to get your autograph and probably buy a lot of your merch. Wink, wink. But
we can only hope.
Best of luck tonight, and best of luck against Cody coming it all in.
Thank you, gents.